The playoff committee released its second version of the rankings last night. Oregon and Ohio State hold steady in the top two spots. Meanwhile, number 12 Georgia, number 14 SMU are the first teams out of this week's ranking. The Bulldogs dropped 9 spots and would currently miss the 12-team playoff, as number 13 Boise State would secure an auto bid as a conference champion. Where's my guy, the mouth of the South, Paul Finebaum? Hi, Paul. Top of the morning to you, sir. Let's dive right in. Paul, what's your biggest takeaway this week?
Well, the biggest takeaway is the fact that Indiana, which has played no one in a non-conference schedule, is ranked dramatically ahead of Georgia. I realize Georgia has 2 losses, Molly, but they have played the toughest schedule in the country. They opened against Clemson. They've been on the road at Kentucky, which beat Ole Miss. And they've also gone to Alabama, Texas, and last week at Ole Miss. Yeah, they have a couple of losses, and they need to beat Tennessee. But Indiana's non-conference schedule, I have to double check here. FIU, that's Florida International, doggy. WIU, I had to look it up. It's Western Illinois University and Charlotte. I mean, I really don't think that those 3 schools combined could beat Georgia's 3rd team, maybe 4th team. They might not be able to beat an intramural team at Georgia, but this committee thing, is valuing that, and they still haven't played anyone. They will play Ohio State, but the fact that they're going to probably get in the playoff with 1 loss, having played no one, while Georgia may very well stay home, having played the toughest schedule in the country, is outrageous.
Mad Dog?
100%, Paul. I got, Molly, not to interrupt, but I got 2 things to say. First off, anybody can win this collegiate championship. All these teams, they got a lot of flaws. That's going to be a crazy month of December, early January. That's the big picture. The other picture is what Paul just said. The Big Ten stinks, okay? South Carolina in the SEC would win the Big Ten. I mean, I know Ohio State and Oregon are pretty good, but the Big Ten, Penn State, how is Penn State 4th? Penn State, who never beats anybody and who got drilled by Ohio State at home, and they got drilled. They're 4th in this poll. At least Indiana hasn't lost a game yet. The Big Ten, think about it. Rutgers stinks. Minnesota stinks. Illinois, UCLA, Notre Dame. Iowa just lost to UCLA, for crying out loud. Purdue is awful. And Michigan State stinks. Then look at the SEC with teams who are not even ranked in the top 12. Texas A&M, LSU, South Carolina, the aforementioned Kentucky. Vanderbilt's pretty good. My goodness gracious, think about it. They put 4 teams in the top 5 in the Big Ten, and that conference is awful for college football. Penn State, which is an embarrassment, the big game, they're the 4th best team in the country. Let's have Penn State play Georgia and ask Vegas what the line would be. Georgia will be a 10-point favorite in that game, for crying out loud. That's what drives me crazy. Stevie.
Yeah, I get you, and I don't disagree with your overall point, Doggy, but, you act like they lost 50-0. Penn State lost 20-13. Yes, I understand their offense wasn't impressive at all, but damn, Doggy, they lost 20-13. So let's pump the brakes with that a little bit. Let's go back to Georgia, Paul Finebaum, with this, because I totally agree with you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Texas the 2nd-ranked team in the nation? Yes or no? Is that not true? Am I blind? All right, now, am I wrong when I point out that Texas lost to Georgia? Didn't they lose to Georgia? Didn't Georgia stroll up into town and beat Texas? With Kevin Durant and everybody coming to Austin, acting like Austin was like it was going to be a party in Austin, and it didn't happen. Remember that? How in God's name does Georgia, I know 2 losses, but how does Georgia fall that precipitously low when you consider that they beat Texas, you've got ranked number 2? That makes no sense to me. Make sense of that to me, for me, Paul.
There's no way. And if you think about it, Stephen A., Indiana or Penn State playing Georgia's schedule would both have 4 losses minimum, and maybe more, because they just couldn't handle it. What's happened to Georgia is that they played such a difficult schedule that they've broken down. Now, we talked about it the other day. Carson Beck has lost his confidence. He doesn't have the same players that he did, but that's still not any explanation for them to are they watching football games, or they just look at these 1,000 data points and come up with some conclusions? Because, I mean, it's really embarrassing that college football, which is a great game, has invested to these people the opportunity and the challenge of coming up with an equitable playoff.
And Dougie and Paul, I will add this in favor of Georgia. You know, they did lose to Alabama, but they were down 28-0. Oh. And they came back and took the lead, and it went ahead, and it took, Jalen Milroy connecting with the freshman, the 17-year-old freshman with the big-time touchdown in order for Alabama to walk away to win that game. I'm simply saying you got to take into account not just the outcome, but the style points do matter. How you lose a game matters. When we saw Alabama versus Georgia, you know what we all stood around and said? Damn, we'd love to see that again. That's what we said.
Yeah.
Let me throw one other one for you two on this thing, too. How is Miami still ranked in the top 10? Miami should have lost to Virginia Tech. That Hail Mary, they got an incredible break in the Hail Mary. They were down by 20-something points to Cal, 5 feet from where I am here today, and they came back and won by a point. They trailed by double digits to Duke at home, and then they got handled by Georgia Tech. I mean, Notre Dame went to Georgia Tech and won by 4 touchdowns. They go to Georgia Tech and they lose. How is Miami out of that awful ACC? Another awful conference. How are they ranked, Paulie, at 8 or what are they, 8 or 9? They should be out of this. They should be out of the top 12. You guys are 1,000% right. Georgia's very good. They should be in this top 10 easy, for crying out loud.
I would flip Miami and Georgia just based off of what you just said, Doggy.
How likely is it that Colorado gets in the CFP?
He's going to the playoffs.
I think right now they're going to get in. I mean, it's a matter of having to beat the rest of the teams on the schedule, which I think they will, and then win the championship game against BYU, which I think they're very capable of. And yeah, I keep saying this because if you go back to Jackson State, which may not be a fair comparison, at the end of the last 2 seasons there was a lot of speculation about Prime. He might be leaving, and they lost those bowl games. And I think that's his biggest challenge, and I think he's capable of it. And Stephen A., I know you believe it as well, of just keeping the noise out. I mean, obviously the Dallas story is rampant, which you said here the other day reverberated around the sports world. And if he can manage to do that, and I think he can, his players, they've shut out everything in the past, then I think they'll win it. They'll win out and get to the playoff, and we have ourselves one of the great stories in college football history.
Let me say this for the record for everybody aware. I haven't spoken to primetime Deion Sanders in weeks, really, since that whole ordeal with the athletic director and them and banning the sports reporter and stuff like that, okay? I will tell you that the Deion Sanders that I've known for years absolutely positively loves coaching kids. He's loved it forever. I mean, when he was doing television, he wouldn't give that stuff up. I mean, he's addicted to it. But the operative word there is kids. How he feel about coaching grown men in the business that is the National Football League is the $64,000 question per se. But and he's very grateful to Boulder, Colorado, and the University of Colorado for bringing him on board. Okay, we all get that. I just find it impossible to believe that if the Dallas Cowboys of the National Football League came calling them and they were in a position to grab his son in the process, that this brother would turn that down. It's just me speculating. I haven't spoken to him, but it's hard to believe.
Yeah, that would be impossible, I think, to turn down. But I want to go back to something Paul said and get your opinion, Dog, because obviously, Paul, the voice of college football for us here at ESPN, and he just said that if Colorado makes the playoff, that will be one of the great stories in college football history. Mad Dog, your thoughts?
No, I disagree with that. I think if Indiana makes the playoffs, that would be a great story. Colorado's won a championship. They won a championship at Colorado back in 91 or 92. They've won a title. He's done a great job. I understand their record. Indiana, they haven't been anywhere since the 1967 Rose Bowl. That is a terrible
Doggy,
football
make up your
factory.
mind.
That guy's done a tremendous job. He's got 11 players from
What are
James
we
Madison
missing?
on his team. If Indiana gets to the 12, Steve, I know you want to jump on a Deion bandwagon, and I like him as much as you do.
No,
but
you
you
don't.
cannot sit there and tell me that story is bigger than Indiana. That's not fair.
First of all, don't give me a first of all. You're not being fair. You're not being fair to imitate you. So let's get that out of the way first. Secondly, will you make up your damn mind? You just finished minutes ago. You were going off about Indiana and how weak their schedule was and who the hell did they beat? And then now all of a sudden you're talking about it to be the greatest story in history. It's very impressive. 10-0 when they were 9-0 last week before this past weekend. They hadn't won more than 8 games in the season since 1967, the year I was born, for crying out loud. So, of course, I understand where you're coming from, but you killed that notion when you talked about the quality of competition or lack thereof they've gone up against. Meanwhile, here we are looking at Colorado. Primetime rolls up in there. They're 1-11. That's the program he inherits. He wins 3 games. He's screaming at reporters, "Do you believe? Do you believe?" And then proceeds to lose 6 straight and 7 in 8 weeks. Everyone leaves them for dead. They go 4-8 on the season. They come into this year. They're projected, moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. They're projected to finish 11th. 11th. And they go out there and they go 7-2. They've locked up second place. They could possibly beat BYU and take the division. On top of it all, make the college football playoffs. The 2 years removed from a 1-11 season, that is one of the biggest stories in college football history. And prime time and the job that he's doing, Coach of the Year, Doggy. Coach of the Year, Travis Hunter, Heisman Trophy winner. Shedeur Sanders, top quarterback pick in the upcoming NFL draft. That's a trifecta, Doggy, in case you didn't know.
And Paul, he talks about people bailing out on Colorado last year after the good start. I didn't see Stephen A. on the sidelines after they started to lose some ball games last year and had a terrible season. He was there for the USC game. He was there early in the year, and he took Shannon Sharp and didn't have to take you and me. But when they started to lose, he washed his hands of Colorado football.
Hold on, time out.
Don't be a phony.
Paul Finebaum, you know why. You know why, Paul. Because if I got choices to go certain places, I ain't going to choose to go to Boulder, Colorado. Go ahead, Paul.
But I want to say one thing, Molly, before we go. Doggy, you're wrong. Stephen A., this year, when I was writing them off and you were writing them off and everyone else was writing them off, he stood by and kept pointing out what Prime was doing. I didn't see it. But I see it now, and you're wrong. This is a much better story. I mean, Indiana that's a nice story, Doggy. Let's wrap our arms around them. But the whole country, the whole world of sports will be talking about Colorado. Nobody's talking about Indiana if they make the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's got a cultural impact.
I am
Gotta leave it there.
Outside of Indiana.
BYU, it's going to be unbelievable.
Hey, Russo, we're done. Coming up.